Would you get thrown into the fire? Hi, my name is Mike, and this is the Open End Podcast. I've been a Christian for about 20 years. For about the last 12, I've really been trying to intentionally study more about the Bible.
Yeah, and I'm Meg. I'm Mike's co-host. I've been a Christian for about 4 years, and I attend Faith Center here in Eureka, California. This is the Open-Ended Podcast, like he said, and we have a great special guest today who spoke last weekend, and her name is Pastor Kathleen Parks.
Hello, that is me. I am Kathleen Parks, and I've been a believer now for almost 33 years. It'll be 33 years next month, actually.
Nice.
And I have been serving in the church in some capacity for about 32 and a half of those. And I have been an licensed, and then ordained minister for about 15 years. So, yeah.
Nice. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank
We'd
you.
love to have you. So, you need to kind of, my OCD brain needs a little clarification.
Okay.
Last week we talked Daniel 4. This week we went to Daniel 3. What happened? Why did we go backwards?
Because we wanted to.
Okay.
That is just why.
All right,
Because each one really focuses on a different theme, and we really liked for this week the theme for this week that we really talked about was standing firm in a changing culture, changing political environment, changing social environment, and then how to do that in love. And those are two things that are pretty near and dear to my heart, and I was on the calendar for this weekend. So voila, there you go.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for clarifying that. My OCD brain just needs to categorize it because that was the first note I made on the
That
service.
is funny because I would have never even noticed that.
Really?
I'd be like, oh, cool, we're in Daniel 3. Let's go.
Nice.
I wouldn't
No.
have even thought about it.
I'm very linear in these ways. Okay. So you want to give us a quick little recap about what your message was?
I mean, really, it's talking through the experience of, and I like to say the experience of, because I think a lot of times when we say the story of, it can get in people's minds of it's a story and not a true experience. It's a historical experience that happened to real people in real life. And so the experience of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they are being told that they have to bow down to this giant, ridiculous 90-foot statue of King Nebuchadnezzar, and that they have to worship that statue, and them being able to stand on, I can't do that. I only bow down to my Father God, period. And they did it. They really did it with love and respect. And even in one of the scriptures, you see that they referred to the king as sir. I'm sorry, sir. I mean, they were being very respectful. And so standing firm, of course, is hugely important, but doing so in love is the only way that your standing is going to make a difference at all. We tend to live in a society that's pretty contentious. And so, and is becoming more and more, if you're not with me, you're against me.
Right.
And so I think it shuts people down really, really fast. Like, just because I don't agree with you means that that's it, I'm out, or you're out, or whatever it is. But those contentious arguments and divisions will never win somebody over or even cause them to even consider your viewpoint. They're going to shut you off immediately. But standing firm in love is completely different, and it's received very differently. And so it's really learning from these guys what that means.
So true. And I love the message, and I can't help. Well, first, how did you feel about the message, Meg? What resonated with you in the message?
What I really caught myself thinking about during the message was this topic of, in culture right now, it's either you're with me or you're against me. Mm-hmm. And it made me think of, like, in a way, I've heard someone say that before. I've heard God say that before. If you're not with me, you're either against me or you're lukewarm. And if you're lukewarm, I'm spitting you out.
Yeah.
So I just kept catching my attention on there's actually only one person who can say that, and it's God. And we don't have the power to really to decide for someone else because we don't know their heart the way that God knows my heart. God can say to me, you're with me or you're against me or you're lukewarm and I'm spitting you out anyway. And it kind of made me really think about my actions. Am I doing things that show God, I am so for you. I'm not just standing in the middle, wandering around or kind of teetering or changing my mind when I'm around certain people. am I for you all the time? And it made me question that. So that's what I liked that it brought out for me in a life application way. I'm not worried that I'm going to get thrown into a furnace, but I do have this, you know, I get to think about my future, my eternal future with God. And in a way, I feel like that's almost as serious as, or could be even more serious than getting thrown into a furnace. You know, my king told me, you need to bow to me, in a really similar way that Nebuchadnezzar told them, you have to bow to me, except that he wasn't God. And my God tells me that. And I say, yes, I will. And you're the only one I'm going to bow to. There's a lot of connections. I could keep going on that, but
I think it's interesting because you just hit on something that is really Western world wonderful things that we enjoy, which is the freedom to still worship as we want, because there are people across the globe that maybe aren't worried about getting thrown into a furnace, but being killed for their faith.
Totally.
There are still people being killed for their faith in droves. We just, Joe and I just went to a conference with other Foursquare pastors a couple of weeks ago. And one of the topics that came up is just how intense the persecution is in Nigeria right now. And I had a pastor friend of mine that had gone over to Nigeria at one point, and he got to talk to some other pastors. It was in a conference thing that they were doing or whatever, a training. I believe they were doing a training. And this particular pastor said that there was one Sunday that as his congregants were leaving the church, there were people outside with machetes, and many of them were killed on spot, just on spot. So we're not worried about that in the Western world, but it is still going on globally for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point that you bring up. Me saying I'm not worried about getting thrown into a furnace is so American.
It's a privilege.
Because it's so Western of me in general. You're so right that I don't even think about that. I'm not worried about being prosecuted in that way or have my life in danger over what I believe in.
Well, and what's so silly, the perspective of that is then the persecution that we would be used to more here is more, you know, oh, you're holier than thou, or, you know, oh, it's the church lady, you know, when we don't want people, we're like, oh, what are they going to think of me? Who cares?
I
mean,
know. It's also
really, who cares?
It's not actually threatening. It's only the only thing it threatens is our cultural image or relevance to like mainstream.
Right.
But yeah.
So I have two thoughts, and I promise to remember the second thought because I forgot the second thought last episode. But that is so crazy to me that people are being killed for their faith. Why are they being killed for their faith over there? Is it because they are challenging the other faiths that are over there? Why is Christianity so feared?
I mean, I think I could go into intellectual thoughts on that, logical reasons on that, but I think truly the bottom line is the scripture says that we do not fight against flesh and blood, but against the powers and the principalities and the spiritual forces in the heavenly realms. Because you look at every other religion, and while they all face their own types of persecution, it is Christianity and Judaism that are attacked most fervently. That is, I believe, that is a spiritual indication that shows you that this God that we are serving is the one true and living God, and there is an enemy who is passionate about destroying him. And the way that you destroy him is to go after what he loves the most, and that is us. Right. And so I just believe that there is a spiritual element that lends toward the way that people who are given over to hatred and evil, there's a spiritual element there that almost beckons them to a disdain for the things of the true living God.
Wow.
And that's why those attacks are so much more prevalent in the Christian faith and in the Jewish faith, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
True. And you want to do your second thought?
No, go ahead,
I
Meg.
just wanted to say
If he remembers
that is a spiritual perspective that I love hearing. And there's also a worldly perspective. And I think me only being Christian for the last 4 years, I still so easily remember what my life was like pre being saved. And I was someone who looked as Christians as a threat to me because, back on the abortion topic, Christians believe in things that the world wants to keep. So is a Christian going to get between me and the ability to have an abortion? Is a Christian going to get in the way of me and being able to marry whoever I want if I'm not in a heterosexual relationship? Is a Christian getting, are these values going to take away my American rights? That is something.
My individual freedoms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is the worldly take on, I think, why some people, I think this is also very American though, because this is in the context of living in a free country where the government has given me the right to do whatever I want. And as a Christian, I choose to opt out of things that I could totally do and never get in trouble for. But I mean, so globally, those contexts are going to be different, but I can remember why Christianity would be a threat to me, not to the point where I'm going to threaten someone's life over it, but it was I thought I might be in danger of, they're going to strip me of my rights because the politicians are going to believe in these Christian values and I'm not going to be able to live the way that I want to live.
Did you feel
Very
like it
arrogant.
was more like Christians were against you instead of being for
Yes,
something that was outside of you?
totally.
Okay.
Good. And I think that's how we are as Christians, I think, seen this way by and large, is that we're not seen for who we believe in, who we serve, the good and amazing God that we know. We are seen, and I think it's because a lot of Christians carry this out this way, as people who view ourselves in the seat of judgment, that we are to carry out these values in other people's lives, versus standing in love and being an example for people to see that I'm going to choose the Christian values that I know are in the Bible, and other people, I'm not in charge of them. And if I watched someone go into an abortion clinic and came out, I am not judging them. I don't know. I have my own opinion. I know what I would do if I was in that situation. I have all of that down. But to another person, am I going to make them feel like they're not worthy of God's love because of that? No. Because that didn't make them unworthy of God's love. Whatever the choice was, whatever the circumstances are. But that is, I think, how we get seen, is threatening to people's freedom.
Well, I think, and I know that you have a second question, I want to get to that, but
No, we want to go deep.
But I
Go
think
deep.
too, it's where we have evolved to in the conversation. Somewhere along the line, there stopped being conversations that were respectful and, and relevant to the current topics. Somewhere along the line, it turned into, this group is going to protest, and then this group is going to go out there and yell at them that they're protesting, and then this group is going to say they want to do this, and they're going to hold up signs that, repent or go to hell, and these guys are going to throw up signs that says, see you there, whatever it might be.
Right.
I mean, the discourse has changed so much along the way, and I think it's changed even more as we have become a society that, let's face it, we are, to one level or another, we all have some sort of connection or addiction to social media. And social media, really at the bottom line of social media says you get to say whatever you want, whenever you want. Kind of like people get in their cars and they road rage in their cars and they say things and they do things they would never do if they were talking to somebody face to face, but they'll do it in their cars. And people will do the same things in social media. And so it's created this culture that says it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks about what you're saying. What you have to say is super, super important. And you, by golly, are going to say it. And people, by golly, are going to listen. And if they don't, then I'm going to ghost them, or I'm going to, blow them up on, on all the comments. And I'm going to do all these. It's just, it has become, again, I guess my word again is so contentious to share opposing opinions on all things, on religion, on politics, on race, on ethnicity, where we got to the place where we could not have loving, kind, and intellectual discourse on those things. It's maddening to me. It's maddening to me, because that's where I think different groups get identified with different things. And unfortunately, as with all things, it's not the mainstream Christians that are usually out there like with the signs and you're all going to hell. It's the really extreme and quite frankly unhealthy. That's not a healthy way to communicate to people. It's not a godly or biblical way to communicate with people. It's not. That is not godly at all. I didn't see Jesus do that ever. No. The only person I ever saw Jesus get upset with was the religious leaders. He never got upset with anybody else. This is not biblical. But the rest of of us believers get thrown in with this bag of these extremists that are behaving and speaking and treating people in a way that most of us would never, ever do. So, okay. Second question.
We're on the edge of our seats. The listeners,
if you remember, does he remember?
Point number 2, no, we got into that. And I love that because that's why Meg and I wanted to do this podcast, is because we want to have this open dialogue back again. And, you know, our country was founded on liberals and Democrats, right? But we used to talk to each other. We used to have opposing opinions, but we used to be able to talk to each other because we offset each other. Mm-hmm. You know, we were left and we were right. And that's the way our brains are for some reason. But those two used to be able to come together and talk about why left was left and why right was right. Mm-hmm. Their opinions were left and why their opinions were right. And then they were able to come to a common ground and be like, oh man, maybe my idea isn't perfect. So I love the fact that you're talking about coming back with each other and giving each other's opinions, because you're right. Trolls or social media trolls were just, it's my way or you're wrong, right? Yeah. It's not true. But so many things that you guys touched on. I'm like, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. There's so much that I want to talk about. Yeah. Point number 2 was, this is what I love about the way that God speaks to each individual person, because I think you two were on the same point when you were giving the recap of what you heard in the message. Mm-hmm. But see, I heard a completely different message on Sunday. Well, it wasn't completely different, but what I heard, and I've listened to your message twice now, because I'm a good host and I do my research. So what I heard and what I thought about was Columbine, and one of the girls, and it's choking me up just even talking about it, but it was such a tragic event. But one of the girls, you know, she had the gun pointed in her face, and he said something like denounce Jesus or something like that. And
I think she was in the library. Yeah. I think, yes. Mm-hmm.
And he ended up shooting her. And that resonated with the story to me, because it's like, would I jump in the fire for Jesus? And you really put it into a great context. I think it was the best line that you said in the message was, if I'm going to die, I'm going to go see Jesus, right?
Oh, the win-win. You're in a win-win.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Or if I don't, Jesus is going to save me. And then it's going to be, you know, exactly what happened in the story.
Yeah. Well, because it's so interesting there, because that came off of what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, which was, my God will rescue me.
Right.
But even if he doesn't, and that's where the win-win comes in, right? It's a win-win. He's either going to rescue me now, he's going to save my life now, or he's going to save my eternal life, and I'm going to go be with him. This is a win-win situation. I can't lose by staying faithful to God. Yeah. Period. I can't lose. That's a win situation. Win-win. Yeah.
It really is. So we started diving into the message quite a bit, but you said a lot of stuff in the beginning.
Sorry.
You stepped on a lot of toes. I know. And it was good. It was good. I didn't.
Oh, during the message. I thought you were saying just now. I was like, what toe did I just step on? What did I do? Okay.
No, in your message. One was that filet mignon needs to be cooked well done.
Oh my gosh. No. Oh, you think it should?
No.
He thinks it needs to be made well done, and that
I did.
That is a travesty. That is a travesty to a good steak, especially for a Texas chick. I'm just telling you, it's wrong in every way, shape, and form. So go ahead.
So people are really confused right now, but if you go in the comment sections, we're linking Pastor Kathleen's message that we're talking about today, so you can watch it. And she said that a filet mignon needs to be rare, bloody, and I said well done in the service.
I said medium rare.
Okay.
Just for context.
Whatever it was. Well, that was just one of the controversial things that you had talked about. There was quite a few, and
And just so you know, I told everybody I'm going to step on some toes today.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to step on toes just because I want to be controversial. I'm going to step on toes because I'm going to stand firm on things that I see are biblical. If we're talking about standing firm, it's easy to stand firm when it's an easy standard or I mean, it's easy. You know, everybody likes red. If you like red, everybody stand together. Woo, we all like red. That's great. That's easy to stand firm on. The places where it's hard to stand firm is when you're going against culture. You're going counterculture. And so I cited some of those things in the course of that conversation. I touched a little bit on abortion. I touched a little bit on sexual relations before marriage. I touched on living together before getting married. So I'm sure that there were some people that were like, dang, hey, girl, what? I'm sure that there were. But here's the deal. Because we haven't I'm sorry, but because we as an American culture, but I would say even globally, have been avoiding these subjects for so long because we don't want to stir the pot and we don't want anybody to get mad and, don't want to offend or do any of those that we won't want to look like we're judging anything. So we have avoided some of these topics for so long that our younger generation literally doesn't know that the Bible says anything about them. That is not okay.
Yeah.
That is not okay. And I know that at one point at a church that I was at previously, Joe and I worked with the youth group for quite a bit. And I had a young lady she had just graduated high school and she was dating a young man that was about to be a senior in high school, and they'd been dating for a while. And I will say this fast, I'm so sorry, but this is going to make my point. And I'm standing there as her pastor. We're standing in the church and just talking about, what are you doing for the summer? And I said, well, what are the plans? And so she said, well, next year I'm going to do da-da-da-da-da-da. And then when my boyfriend graduates this time next year, we're planning on moving in together and we're going to and she's talking about this like it's totally normal. And I'm standing there going, and I'm saying to myself, I have been her youth pastor. Joe and I have been her youth pastor for a year now. Have we never talked about this? In her mind, it was so okay. There was nothing in biblical standard about it that would make her pause to not tell your pastor, I'm moving in with my boyfriend when I'm 19 and he's 18. And I go, no, you're not. And she goes, what? And I go, you are not doing that. And she goes, why am I not doing that? I go, babe, do you know that the Bible speaks to this issue, that there is biblical standard on this issue? And she goes, no, what are you talking about? And so it opened up this whole conversation, and it made me go home and go, I think we're failing as pastors, not just Joe and I, but I think as a whole, I think we're failing as pastors. We're not talking about these things anymore because somewhere along the lines, we became more afraid of offending someone than we became afraid of not defending our God and his standards. So it's a deal. Yeah. It's a deal.
Yeah. So you touched on both of them. Abortion, when I was about to bring it up, I didn't really know where to go with it, but I think you really defined it because Meg and I actually had a conversation about it before we started recording. And for me, and she brought up a good point that I didn't even think about. I was telling her my ideas about what I was going to say on the podcast, on this episode. And she's like, and because I was wondering what line we shouldn't cross, how far we shouldn't go. And she's like, it's the open-ended podcast. We're going to go as deep as, we want to. Mm-hmm. But she brought up the point that a lot of people are going to take it as you're a man. You have no right to have an opinion about abortion.
I totally disagree.
Yeah.
Keep saying that, but I keep saying what you're saying, but I totally disagree. But I'll tell you why in just a second here.
Yeah, I agree with that and I'll tell you why. Because, I have a 30-year-old. Well, he's turning 30 this month. And back when she got pregnant, when we realized that she got pregnant, I was 19 years old. And somebody offered for us to have an abortion because of that. And so for people to say that a man doesn't have the right to make the choice, Casey is as much mine as he was his mom's.
There it is.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And of course, I didn't have to carry it. I wasn't a deadbeat dad. I didn't leave her. I didn't do any of that stuff. I stuck around.
Yeah.
And so God's really given me the discernment that not to tell my views about how I feel about abortion, what I think is right or wrong or whatever it is. But I do think that it is a topic that we don't talk about, you know, and I'm glad that you brought it. And I don't know why I'm getting so emotional about it. It's so weird. I look at you and you guys look, Mama Kathleen, make me cry.
Sorry.
I don't know, getting choked up. Been a long week, I guess, but these are topics that are near and dear to my heart. So,
Well, and it's an example of what there are things I think in this topic of standing firm that we might not know what's the boundary for who. And that's the conversation we were having before is, you know, I said, that's up to you. You say what you want to say, but there might be some people who think this, but you say what you want to say, because if it's biblical, you get to stand by that. You're a Christian person. And if you believe in the Bible, it's not even you going out of bounds to say what a woman should or shouldn't do with her body. You're just standing by what the Bible says. It's less about your opinion. And that's a nice thing to take out of it. That I think makes it easier to stand firm on something is it's not even my opinion. But if God said it, I don't have to like agree with it, or my opinion doesn't have to be that, I don't know about that. He said it. He said it. I believe that that's the right thing to do. Then I'm going to. And I think that's where you are with it. It's not like you're trying to tell a woman what she should or shouldn't do. You're standing firm in what the Bible says about it.
yeah, I am. And you know what I'm getting tripped up about? Maybe we can have this conversation, that the three of us is, so what my belief is that if the mom's giving birth and it's a choice between the mom or the baby, you know, my own personal belief is that, you know, you save the mom, right? So that'd be my only course of abortion being all right in my brain. There's another one that I'm trying to work out with God, and I won't bring it up on this podcast, but the Bible says don't kill. But then it goes back to me thinking about it. And then there's certain religious organizations that don't take any medicines. They don't go see doctors. And like, it's kind of goes back to that story about God coming and saving you with a boat and a helicopter and everything else. It's like God's given us this knowledge to be so medically advanced these days that I don't think that we have to make those choices anymore. Back then they didn't have any options. It was,
Oh, you mean whether or not we're going to choose the life of the baby or the life of the mom during pregnancy?
During pregnancy and given during birth. So I think now we have those options, and medically we have the options to be able to save, you know, one or both of them. Mm-hmm. So with that, I guess I'll stop there. And how do you guys feel about the comment that I just made? You know, like with the religious organizations that don't have any medicines, they don't get to see doctors or anything on that topic.
Well,
or nothing too. If you don't have anything to say, that's fine.
I think you're right. We're in a different place medically than, you know, we've been historically in the past. And usually doctors have the resources to save both baby and mom. What's funny is I think most men would agree with you that if there has to be a choice, take the baby. And most women would say, no, take the mom. And I mean, almost every woman and man that I have talked to on this subject is divided down that line. Mm-hmm. But I think there's something about that with, to be fair, yes, that I think that a man has every right to speak into and to have a desire as to whether or not they want a woman to have an abortion. It is 50% their baby. Mm-hmm. So men should be able to speak. I think it's totally unfair that there is a presumption that men should just be quiet and sit down and let me do this, make this decision.
Idea
it's
now in culture
huge.
Is that men have nothing, that men are dirt, nothing. You don't get to say anything. I see it everywhere.
Oh, we could talk about that all day. We can do another podcast on that. I will go there with you.
That I like this podcast is something that now even this topic, it gets me kind of riled up because I get so irritated seeing all this bashing of men all the time by women who aren't men. So if you're going to be arguing that like, well, you're not a woman, you don't know what I'm talking about, then I'm a woman and I don't know what I'm talking about if I'm talking about a man. You can't say that all men are trash and all men are this and that. Oh, it just bugs me so much. And it is so against, that's another thing to stand firm on, because it is so against the Bible to say that a whole gender is trash, or that they like, it gets me so upset. God designed both man and woman.
Yeah. And
we bring amazing, totally different things to the table, and we need each other. We need 100%. Our men. Like, we need them. So it really just frustrates me, this whole, like, we don't need men. If men could just fall off the face of the earth, all this messaging, just like, are you kidding me? Imagine a world with only women. God didn't design that. So I don't want it.
And I've worked in offices with only women. It's not great. I'm just saying there always needs to be a balance. There always needs to be a balance. But that, I mean, I'm kind of joking about that, but not so much. But I think that men definitely have a right to that. The women saying, you know, it's my body. Here's where I go with that. Okay. It was your body to decide what you were going to do with it when this child was conceived. But now there's another body that is a part of this. When does that body have the same rights that your body does? Because you made a choice with your body. Statistically speaking, that woman made a choice with her body that most people make before they get married. Let's be honest. These are statistics. But now it's about another body. Yeah. There is another body. And why does that body not have the same autonomy and value as the woman? And then why does the body of the man who also contributed to that pregnancy also not have the same autonomy and value? It's pretty insane to me to think about it. But what you said earlier, Meg, you were saying it's not necessarily about my opinion. I just heard a little blurb recently that talked about when Paul said in I want to say it was
one of the letters.
It was something. It was in the Bible. It was something in the Bible. And he said, I know nothing but Christ Jesus and Christ crucified. I know nothing else. And so that lends toward the what ideologies did I grow up with friends around me? What was I taught by my family? What are some of my own opinions? Just because in my observation of the world, there comes a point where a Christ follower, if you are following Christ, it's like follow the leader. He turns left, you turn left. He takes a jump, you take a jump. He says stop, you stop. And there's nobody's in the line playing follow the leader going, wait a minute, I wanted to go left. I wanted to go left up there. Hey, we're going left. That's not how the game is played. Yeah. So if I'm following the leader, my leader is God. Mm-hmm. So I follow the leader, and my opinion of whether or not I want to turn left or turn right or do hopscotch, I submit my own intellect and my own opinion to the authority of God and his word. And even if I don't understand it, and this is one of the things I said in the message was, before I was a Christian, my views of abortion were a little bit different than they are now. But then I started reading in the Bible, and I'm like, oh, we are formed in the womb and we are knitted together. I think you said that we are knitted together in our mother's womb. This is literally the hand of God forming us in our mother's womb, which is why nobody can tell me, but there's not a heartbeat yet. And there's not, we are being formed. We are being formed. And so before I became a Christian, my views were a little bit different. I was divided on some areas. But then when I read those passages that said, that we were formed and we were knitted, and I read those, I was like, okay. And I said, God, there's some areas where I don't know what I think about that. I mean, I think as a whole, I'm absolutely pro-life, and I would hate for somebody to get, but there's circumstances. But then I had to say, but if we're formed and we're knitted, how can I stop that life? And so I was like, okay, God, you know what? I don't necessarily understand it all, but I'm going to submit to your authority, and this is my stand, right? This is my stand that I'm going to take period, no matter what, I will take a stand to be pro the life that you are literally forming in that mother's womb. Yeah. I will take that stand. And what I'm going to ask of you, God, is in the areas that I maybe reverently would say I don't necessarily agree, help me to understand. Help me to understand what your heart thinks about that. Where's the heart of God on that issue? Because I want to know and I want to understand and I want to align with what I see is biblical standard, which means that's part of your character. I want to discover your character in that, so help me, God, to do that. Mm-hmm. That's the take I've taken over the years on many, many things when I've realized my opinion does not align with what's in Scripture.
That's good that you say that, because I think that and I think that's where you see the hesitant and the lack of confidence in my own talking about this topic, is because, you know, I've read through the Bible 3 or 4 times all the way through. This time that I'm reading through the Bible, for some reason, it's like my arms, my heart, my brain, everything is just wide open, and it's just like flowing inside of me, and I'm picking up all this stuff that I never picked up before. And it's amazing. I love it. It's like filling me up. And that's where my lack of confidence is, because, you know, I'm in the Old Testament right now, getting into the New Testament, and it's like I'm still picking up these pieces that Jesus is telling me what to do. And it's super confusing because the Old Testament is so weird and they have so many different things. I'm like, we don't do that. Why are we telling people to do that? And then I have to realize that there was a New Testament and New Covenant that came out. So keep going back and forth.
One of the biggest examples of standing firm that I've ever seen in my life was from my husband, Luis. And before we got baptized, we both had just recently kind of started seeking out the word, and were like thinking about going to a church. And at that same time that was all happening, I felt like we're getting pretty serious, and I really, really wanted us to kind of get the show on the road. And I was like, I think it's about time for us to move in together. And Luis, not for a second did he even think about it. Mm-hmm. He read in God's word that he's just like, I'm not super clear on it, so we're not doing it, because I'm not super sure, but it seems like we shouldn't. So we're not doing it. And I pestered and read. I studied and I looked it up, and I was finding all these ways to be like, it's really not clear. So you can't say that this is what it says, because it doesn't. Like, it doesn't say 2 people cannot live. And I went in all these circles. I found the thing where it says that you just can't share a marriage bed. Well, I said, honey, that's metaphorical for when you have sex, you make it the marriage bed. A regular bed that you don't have sex in is just a bed. And a marriage bed is what married people do. We won't do any of that. We're just going to live together and get married some other time, later down the road. And he just was like, I'm not doing it. And at the time, I mean, we were full, other than him standing firm on that, we were living like we were not Christians in every way, in every single way that there was. Wow. And at that point, as soon as I started bringing up, we're always together, we're always at each other's houses, we're sleeping over at each other's houses every night, we should just move in together. And that's what spurred him, you know what? No, because I've known this whole time that we weren't really supposed to even be doing this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, no. And it was at that point that he drew the line, and we gave our relationship over to the Lord, stopped doing what we were doing, stopped having sleepovers. We just turned it all around, and it frustrated me so much. I was like, I don't know if we can be together, because you obviously don't want to live with me and all of these things, because I didn't have those values. And I felt so rejected by that. I'm also recovering codependent, and that just crushed me that he didn't want to do that. So that was one way. And another way that was much more recent in our married life, on this topic of like saving the mom or saving the baby. I hope I don't cry now. I have some reproductive problems, and we're kind of in the works of trying to see down the road if we can have a biological baby. And I get all of these things in my head about like, what if I am able to get pregnant, and then something crazy happens and the doctor asks you, you have to choose one, save mom or save baby. And you have to choose, who are you going to choose? And his like gut reaction was to say baby. And I, once again, was crushed. I said, really? You would just say bye forever, Meg, to have a baby that you're going to raise alone? And we could, and anyway, he ended up, I'm sharing this because of what I'm about to say. He ended up praying about it some more. And this whole, I'm devastated in my mind because I understand where he's coming from. So I can't be too mad at him for wanting to save a baby who, I agree with him.
Yeah.
But I also felt like he's just going to let me go. And he prayed about it and came back and he said, I read up on this a little more and I got really convicted in this way. He said, if I'm the husband and you're the wife, Jesus and the church is his bride. And if I'm supposed to be representing the head of the church in our marriage, then I'm representing the head of the church and you're the bride. And God sacrificed his son for the bride.
Wow.
And that cut me really deep, not even just for like our situation, but it helped me understand even deeper what God did.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he was a precious, precious sacrifice. And I'm not a mom, so I can't imagine right now what it's like to give up your kid. But I think it helped me inch a little closer to that understanding of what's been done for me. The most heart-wrenching thing you can even think of. And that was done for me. And that example is something that is so, it means so much to me now and is so worth the, week of devastation that I spent thinking my husband will let me die. If I have a complication, like he's going to let me go, and him coming back to say, you know what? I'm sorry. That's actually not what I would do. And, you're the one that gets saved because this is the representation of marriage. And if I'm really representing marriage the way that God, wants us to, then this is actually what would happen. And that reassurance just meant so much. But it's just once again another example of him standing so firm on God's word. That man will not budge. He does not budge on God's word. And I know that him being who he is, he would jump into the fire willingly, like cannonball it into the fire if he was given the choice, the chance. And that I'm willing to follow the leader on that one. Like he leads us there all the time. And I'm so, so grateful for that. He's strong-willed in so many ways, and that's frustrating. But this way, I'm like, stay that way because this is what he leads us into. And I think that's really amazing. And my biggest example of standing firm that I've ever
even
seen.
Thought of that.
I know.
I've never pondered that.
Me either.
That's really beautiful.
I know.
Yeah.
I've had 2 aha moments with you because of you in my Christian faith and the little time that I've known you.
2 aha moments.
And this was the second one because you've told me that story before. And then you just telling it right now just really made it sink home into my brain and my heart. And it just makes me admire your husband so much more with both of these stories.
Yeah.
Because I'm a pretty big proponent of test driving. How did you say it in your message?
Test drive.
Test driving
That was
relationships.
That was funny. And that's so true. People really do say that.
They do.
Give it a trial run or a test drive, whichever
Move
one
it. You have to move in together first. I said 2 things, like test drive it, and I don't even remember what the other thing was that I said. But people are like, well, you test drive a car. Why would you not test drive a relationship? See if it works.
Yeah.
But
sit for a little bit.
that's so opposite the concept of I love this person, I make a commitment, and what do our vows say? For better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. We don't have any of those commitments when we're in the middle of a test drive.
Right.
We only have those commitments when we've signed the document. So, but let's be clear, because you said that you were a pretty big proponent of that. I will be honest, and I will tell you, Joe and I have beat the odds, because Joe and I were not Christ followers when we got married, and we did live together for a year and a half before we got married, and we got married when we were barely 20 years old. I mean, there's a lot of statistics that we have overcome that we are still together 33 years later. We're still together. We've really beat the statistical odds on that. We really, really did. And I came to faith 2 weeks after we got married. And Joe did not come around for like another year. So that was another, like, we were not equally, I mean, there was just a lot of things that statistically were going against us. So I'm not judging anybody who's doing, but I'm saying now that I know, I know that was not biblical, because what your argument that you made to your hubby, which was, we're not going to share the marriage bed. Yeah. One of the things I said to that girl in my youth is, the temptation that you will have if you are in that same place together day and night, there's no way you're not going to move into that type of relationship. I just don't even know that there's a way humanly possible. And I'm not talking stats there. I'm just talking, we know human nature. I just don't know that there's any way that that's not going to happen. And that's where it becomes a guard your heart kind of situation.
We had Christian friends too, who we met as new Christians who were living that way together pre-marriage, and we were like, in my mind, how much easier is that other Christians are doing it?
Yeah.
Right? So that standing firm, even against not even just worldly culture, but if other people who who are Christians just don't hold that value as high, are you still going to hold it to what it should be? Even if they're not in leadership, it doesn't matter. Other Christians are leaders in everywhere you go. You are, even if you don't see yourself that way. So what example are you going to be?
Exactly. I don't know. I was not living right before I became a Christian.
I wasn't either.
I wasn't living right after I became a Christian, to be honest with you. Until I got serious about being a Christian, then I started really getting right about it. But I wanted to, I know I kind of jumped to another topic, but I wanted to finish off with what our last topic. Was there any closing comments on that one, or are we good to move on?
Okay.
I didn't want to cut anybody off. Good. All right. So test driving relationships. Did you ever find that part where it says don't live together? Because Abraham had a whole bunch of wives and, all kinds of stuff going on behind the tents.
Oh my gosh.
Outside of the tents, around the tents. With servants.
Definitely not inside, but outside the tent.
Yeah.
Oh my
I think
gosh.
Solomon had 1,000 wives. This is just, the Bible's all over the place about this one. Maybe in the New Covenant.
It can be really confusing for a new Christian, especially who doesn't know, understand what covenant are we living in. If you don't, it's kind of hard. And I think you do still need discernment to be able to kind of conclude that, no, that is for marriage. There are things that are reserved for marriage. And I don't know if I ever ended up finding it, but I ended up just falling in line. Honestly, I ended up just believing. And that's probably the time that I learned to pray, because I was like, what the heck? Like, why, God, why would you not trust me that I'm not going to, violate we're not going to do anything, But yeah, I don't know if I ever found it.
That's interesting. I've always struggled with this one, to be honest with you, because, as a man, I love my wife. And I love that I'm, monogamous with her and I'm in this relationship with her. But she's cringing as she's listening to this on the couch right now. Trust me. She doesn't know where this is going to. But biologically, about every 48 hours, and I don't know how it is with women, but my sex drive is reset and it's just recharged on fire.
Every 48 hours? It's like clockwork?
Roughly. We teach this when we do the marriage retreats. We talk about this stuff in the marriage retreat too. But Yeah, for a man, basically every 48 hours, your sexuality or your libido or whatever you want to call it, whatever it's called, gets reset and
Wow.
things get ramped back up again. So, and then, they talk about in the Bible to go and populate the world. Okay, well, we got to populate the world because, and the way that we do that was
It's going.
with sexual intercourse. So I've always thought that one. In my brain, I'm like, if I'm supposed to be with one woman all my life, why am I so sexually charged? Don't look at me like that. What am I looking
I don't know. I'm just waiting to see where this is gonna land. That's all.
Waiting to go where it's going. So why didn't God design me? Why didn't God design me to just be content and not have to go to the gym and worry about my eyes wandering or having any kind of lust that drives me crazy every single day? That seems to be like my biggest sin. And I don't think I'm alone in this one, but it seems to be my biggest sin. It's like, God, why couldn't you just design me to look at the one that I'm married to and the one I'm going to be with for the rest of my life?
It's obviously so innate. If even back in the Old Testament, when I think things were a lot scarier for people, like the consequences from God were a lot more immediate feeling, a lot more physical. And they still had, like we said, concubines and so many wives. It's obviously something that's innate. Now, can I explain why? No, but I'm pulling from what I hear so many. You are so not alone in that. Honestly, probably every single man. No. That's just something that is, I wish I could explain it or know why. As a wife,
there's actually a book out there. There's a book out there called Every Man's Battle, and it goes through this whole thing. And what, if I recall, because it's been a long time since Joe read it, what it kind of goes through what the battle is, why the battle is like that, physically and emotionally or whatever, and then the woman is supposed to go in and read the summary of the thing at the end of each chapter. And Joe's having me read the summary, and I'm like, men are just gross. Yeah. They're just terrible.
We are. Man, I don't know what to tell you.
I'm like, oh my gosh. But it really helped me understand a lot about Joe, and it really helped Joe understand a lot about Joe. But it also even talked about, even culturally, because we do this to our little boys. We have our little boys in a restaurant, and a cute little girl walks in a cute little dress, and we go, look at that little girl. She's so cute. And we even train them at young ages to check that one out. Check, what's she look like? Is she cute? Is she not? We train our little boys even to do that. A lot of times it just happens. And so one of the things that the book did that was really incredible for Joe is it taught him it's the bounce technique. And that is, if you look over and you see someone or a picture or a billboard that causes you a double take, you bounce. You purposely turn your eyes elsewhere. So that you won't get pulled into that, because we talked about that in the message, the vain images, right?
Yep.
That's one of the things we talked about in vain images, and what can that pull us into? Vain images can pull us into from pornography to sexual sin and just a million different things. Vain images they're a window to the soul. But that book, for anybody who's listening, that book is a really good book. And I think it helps men understand themselves and not feel so guilty about themselves. And it helps women understand their men and not be so frustrated with their men.
So in being real on this podcast, then I opened up vulnerable to you guys, to you two. Do women deal with that also? When you walk into a room, do you notice that there's attractive people in there, or is that not even a thought in your own heads?
I have an answer. What's yours?
Mine
You
would
go
be,
first. And I'll adjust mine.
Mine would be, and I'll be really honest. Mine's much less about who I might find physically attractive, but definitely again on the whole what's innate for which gender. I do think that some of my womanly innateness can come out if I can see, and this is more of on those vain images too, because I get into a spirit of comparison sometimes. If I see that another man who's like seems really happy in their marriage and is just providing so well for his woman, and that will sometimes make me like, I want to like look at that more, and
That looks attractive
It's
to
something
you.
that is attractive. It's
Yeah.
less about like physical, what I would maybe per se do with that person. I don't necessarily have those thoughts personally. I know that women do. I personally don't struggle with that so much as the fulfilling my needs in a big life way. Like, yeah. What about you?
Yeah. And I think that's true, that different qualities in different men, you are attracted to that quality because he's a person of, character, or he's funny, or he's really intelligent. And when you have a conversation with him, he really pulls you into a conversation that is, like, oh, this is a really great conversation. But I do think for sure that women absolutely can walk into a restaurant and happen to see somebody and be like, that's a nice looking specimen right there. But
You're the first woman that I've asked this question to that's ever admitted it to me.
oh, seriously?
Yep.
But here, where I think it's probably different, at least for me, is I might look at him and go, he looks pretty nice. But that's my last thought. Like there's no other thought. It's not like I'm going to go sit down at my table and keep glancing over, because I just want to gaze a little bit longer. That my last thought is, he's pretty handsome. I mean, got to give it to him. That guy's pretty handsome. That's the last thought that I'm necessarily going to have. I'm not going to have a further thought than that.
To be honest with you, I recognize there's a good looking guy in the room too. I'll be,
Yeah.
You know what? Okay, to be fair, I probably fixate more on an attractive woman. And there's something about women that we're just jealous. We're just like, you're
more
just
vain imaging.
you're just way too cute, and that's rude to be that cute. I mean, it's just not okay.
Kathleen says that about me.
Every day I walk by her and I go, dang, she's just so stinking cute. It just hurts my feelings. But I think I probably fixate more on her. And maybe there's a part of me that is even wondering, did my husband notice her? Did he notice her? Because she's a cutie patootie. Oh, yeah. But
we noticed every single woman in that restaurant, to be honest with you. And I'm sorry. It just happened.
Yeah, I think I'm with you too, Kathleen. And it lends more to the overall needs that are being met. Is I do also look at other women and go, man, I wonder if I notice that she has great features on her body or something, I'm like, oh man, probably looked at that. And men, it hurts women when there are other women who we don't look like. We will never have things that certain other women have.
Yeah.
That I know is attractive to my husband. Man, and I see one, I'm like, man, I'm happy for her. I'm not mad at her. But man,
I'm not mad at her.
Not mad.
I'm not mad at her. And a lot of people can turn the either envy or jealousy into anger and just like, oh, you don't want anything to do with them. I have
And saying things, and women in our cattiness go, oh, she's probably not a nice person.
Right.
She's probably
Their
really
personality
like
probably sucks.
witchy woman,
Yeah.
And that's just lame. That's
is.
just lame. But I think there's something about, because we know that most men are more visual than women. So I think there's something about when somebody comes in and they're very, very visually appealing, that it can almost be threatening. Like, what, hey, husband, But I think over time, because Joe and I have been married for so long, I don't think I have felt that like, hey, for years and years and years. And probably, to be honest, a lot since he read that book, Every Man's Battle, because he told me when he was reading that book what battles he was specifically going through that I had no idea that he was going through, and what he was doing to change those. And and things changed dramatically. And every now and then, for a couple of years, I would check back, how you doing? How you doing with that? How you doing with that? And he'd be like, I'm good, man. I'm solid. And so that security, maybe for me, that made me feel more secure. And a lot of those thoughts really went away.
What do you do to stand firm when you are noticing somebody in public? Let's say that use the restaurant. You walk into a restaurant and there's some beautiful woman or whatever. you are happy in your marriage. You love your wife. So what do you do to redirect your thoughts?
I get frustrated that I even noticed in the first place. I feel like that I failed God in the first place, but I bounce a lot. And I just did this to her yesterday, but I recognize how beautiful my wife is.
She is.
And I tell her constantly.
She is something else.
You know, and she's all giddy when I tell her it's cute. But that brings up another point. What if one of us got into a horrific accident and we were deformed, you know, and we weren't attractive anymore? And it's like,
For better or for worse, baby?
yeah, exactly. Right. That's the way it works. Now, am I going to feel bad? I'm going to be like, man, she doesn't find me attractive anymore. I'm ugly. I'm hideous. Blah, blah, blah. Or I might be like, this woman loves me no matter what. So, and that's how I feel about her, no matter what happens. And it's like, I used to hear older people say this all the time, you know, really wrinkly old people.
Really wrinkly,
They're like-
old.
like
He's
my-
qualifying. Old.
Yeah, like my grandparents, like, my wife's so beautiful. Oh, your grandma's so cute, you know? And I'm like, she's really not that cute, Grandpa. You know, maybe back in the day. But as we old, man, those wrinkles and those age marks, even just, I'm finding them more and more attractive. And I'm like, man, I really love this woman. You know, she's just incredible. But it's those intrusive thoughts that drive me crazy, and it's battling them. And I know I'm not the only one, because I talk openly to a lot of men about our intrusive thoughts, and we all deal with them. But I'm glad to hear that you all don't deal with those intrusive thoughts very
But
much.
I know women who do. I don't think that it's you know, a straight gender thing. Men deal with this and women don't. It's just more men deal with this than women. Because I know several people who would say, you know, I'm struggling with but it's usually more for a woman. It's usually more for somebody that they're in close proximity to, like somebody at work. So they found them initially attractive, and then as they got to know them, they saw characteristics that seemed attractive, and then they feel a little drawn to that. It's you, because women, it's not as visual for women, it's more emotional for women, but they will notice the physical first.
All right, so we had a little interruption. All of our phones started going off all at once, so we're cutting back in. So we apologize if we left mid-thought. I do have something. I love it when I get together with women that are free to openly talk to me and freely talk to me. So one thing that I deal with is intrusive thoughts, right? And it seems like for me, the one time that I have the most intrusive thoughts, which this is going to make sense when I say it, is during worship either at Celebrate Recovery or in the big service. And you all know that I sit front and center because I can't handle the distractions or anything like that. But I'm telling you what, some of the thoughts that come into my head, it's like, where in the heck did that come from?
Yeah.
And I'm like, why am I having those intense thoughts right now? And I realize it's because I'm sitting here worshiping for 30 minutes and the devil doesn't want to. And I've talked to a lot of men about this, and the intrusive thoughts vary widely across the board. There's people that have intrusive thoughts about being disruptive. There's people that have intrusive thoughts about, you know, other women in the church or something like that. Or, you know, when I started carrying a gun also, I started having a lot more thoughts about what would I do if somebody pulled a gun, and then before I know it, I'm in this big shootout and I'm John Wayne, and you know, we're at the
Of course, you're John Wayne in this scenario.
I'm at the OK Corral and I saved everybody, and my mind it runs wild. It's very what would you call it? It's very dynamic. So with that being said, I don't know how much of that I'm going to cut out, but with that being said, do y'all have intrusive thoughts like that too?
I do every time I go to pray.
Praying.
Every time I go to pray, I think about, you know, oh, I didn't make that phone call. I need to make that phone call. Or, oh, I forgot to get the mushrooms for dinner tonight. Or, I mean, just whatever. the whole time, and I'll do the same thing. Why am I thinking about this right now? This is driving me crazy. I mean, one of the things I'll do is I'll pray out loud, and that makes a big difference. That helps a lot. But if I'm just laying in bed and I'm just quietly praying, because Joe's sleeping or whatever, and I'm just praying, I will rabbit trail for 5 minutes before I realize I just totally, I was talking to Jesus, and now all of a sudden I'm like imagining what I want to plant in my garden, and I'm just so far out there. I must confess that almost every time I drive by a work crew on the road, everything in me wants to just honk my horn really loud and see if they'll jump. And I'm like, don't do it. Don't do
Not
it.
where I thought that was going, but I was a little nervous. But I like your attitude.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Okay,
Intrusive thoughts.
I do. It's a problem. It really is a problem. Mine is like really catastrophic things playing out. I play them all the way out in my mind. Out of left field, just terrible things happening to people that I love, like the worst things that could happen in my life. I don't even know where it comes from. I just imagine it. And that's part of where the question that was like, what if you have to choose between me and the baby type of thing comes from, is me just going to the worst possible case scenario. And I play it all the way through to the point where it does come out into my daily life. Most of my intrusive thoughts are just catastrophic things happening. Not so much to me. I'm not as worried about things happening to me, maybe because I know where I'm going and I know like how I can imagine how I would deal with something happening directly to me, but more, how would it affect that person? How would it affect my family, the person's family who got affected by this thing, whatever that I make up in my head. Or I'll take real life catastrophic situations and add lots of things to them.
How do you get control of that? I guess that's for both of you. How do you get control of that?
Yeah, I think it's hard. A lot of times I'll be honest, I don't remember to pray about that in the moment. Here comes great Luis again. I'll usually tell him about it and he goes, have you prayed about it? And I'm like,
He's so good.
no, I haven't prayed about it. I wanted to talk to you about it. He was like, well, I can't do anything about it. You talk to God about it. And he's so right. So usually I get reined in by him about that. Or I'll just try in that moment. I'm like, stop thinking like this. Like, just think of something else. And that, I mean, I've been dealing with this for a long time with lots of different thoughts. And I've, again, pre-Christian, like I've gone to therapy about this and gotten more worldly advice of like, just picture something that is actually really good. Like picture something that either feels good and think about that instead.
Go to your happy place.
Go to your happy place type of thing.
Yeah.
Not go to God and ask him for help to take the thought captive, but more like just distract yourself with something else, which doesn't solve the problem. It just distracts me in the moment. But as a Christian, I don't know where that is in the Bible, but I'm pretty sure that it's Paul. I'm not sure actually at all. But the idea of taking the thought captive, like every thought captive,
and make it obedient to Christ.
Yes. And I think that is now what I have to stand on when I deal with stuff like that, is that really, really applies to a lot of people. I mean, anyone who thinks that like mental health issues aren't addressed in the Bible, that's a huge one that applies to so many things that like, what's the word? Ail us, I guess. In the mental health area, is your thoughts just taking you somewhere where you shouldn't be, an unhealthy mind. That is really, of course it's easier said than done, but that is solved by that biblical principle of taking every single thought captive. And I have so many thoughts. But my God is able. So we're good.
Nice. Love it. Good old Luis. Jen tells me that same thing. Have you prayed about it? No, I haven't. Thank you very much. I have not. I will right now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
And my problem is when I'm praying is when I'm having intrusive thoughts.
Oh no, I have those intrusive thoughts too. I've been when I lay in bed, I'll go through my day and like, Holy Spirit, come into my life. Holy Spirit, come into my heart. Come into my heart. Come into my heart. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I need 4.5 grains of black powder to make this bullet travel. And it's like, how did I get to make reloading ammunition?
The thoughts are so random. They are.
I love to backtrack though and think of how I got to that final rabbit trail. And it's like, oh, I was thinking about this, which made me think about this, which made me think about this.
That's funny.
And then I was thinking about how buff Jesus was. That's how it all started. He was a carpenter. He must have been really buff. It's like, I love my mind. Only if you guys could live in my mind for like a few minutes, it'd be just, whoa, crazy.
I don't think we'd fit in there. You got a lot of thoughts.
Yeah. I'm just really glad that nobody else can see into my mind, to be honest with you.
I think we all are glad for that, to be fair.
Yeah.
Well, Joe and I are a lot alike, so that you probably have a pretty good idea of what our minds go through. But to answer your question, your husband actually breaks up my intrusive thoughts a lot of the time when I'm worshiping, because one thing that I notice, and I don't know why I notice this so much, but when I'm up there, I'm trying not to cross my arms because that makes her laugh on stage, and I don't want her laughing on a Sunday.
That's how he tells me it's time to be over. We need to move on. That's done.
In CR, yeah, I cross my arms. It's one of those things. Yeah. So I stick my hands in my pockets, but I've got a certain kind of gum that's in my pockets. I got my work phone that's on one side. I got my personal phone that's on the other side. I have my car keys are in the other one. It's all my stuff. It's all the stuff that holds me, And so I try to take my hands out, and I'm like, what do I do with my hands when I worship? What is it?
And then here comes Joe.
Do I go like this? And then here comes Joe, and he's like bebopping around. He's always wanting me to dance because I told him fairly. I told Joe before he moved up here that he needs to teach me how to dance.
And I told you should never have asked for that.
Yes.
I did.
Yeah.
So now Joe walks up to me and starts kind of getting me excited. And then I try to dance, and I realize I can't dance, man. This doesn't look good. So I got to stop. But he breaks me out of my own intrusive thoughts.
Oh, gotcha.
And then I'm like, my hand's going up. I'm starting to pay attention to the words, different things that are going on. So before Joe, I just wallowed in my intrusive thoughts during worship.
I love that you said that, because the whole, and this is something we could have a whole other podcast episode on. Why do we worship the way that we worship?
Write down some ideas.
Your hands going up, I think a lot of people can liken this to, this is what you do when you're in surrender. If a cop's coming at you, you're putting your hands up and going, I'm good. So it's also a way of just surrendering anything that you were getting distracted by. Your hands.
Like, I don't know what to do with these hands, so I'm going to put them here.
I'm just going to put them up. Not only are you reaching toward this kind of, we think of God as being like straight north or, up. And not only are you kind of having that as your own bodily imagery, your physical imagery, but it's also just telling your body, which will inform your thoughts. Like, it's out of my hands. Yeah. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything to be distracted by. And when your hands are empty and your hands are up, then you're just kind of like letting that get fall. I know Joe is also a fan of that kind of imagery. He's talked to me before about like, if you're receiving something, maybe your hands are up and then, or maybe you're imagining all these things and then you flip them and you drop it and you're just, that's it. And it's kind of a way of bodily, and I wouldn't really think to like picture that or have to do that, but I could see that being really helpful for somebody to physically practice that. So maybe that's something you could do next time you feel all the things in your pockets. I'll watch you from stage go.
Yeah. They don't make you laugh for sure.
I also like, because I've taught before on the surrender, this is the surrender, but it's also, if you have a little 3-year-old and they need comfort or love they come to you, right?
I've heard you say that.
Allison used to say, Allison is my youngest daughter, and she used to do this, and she'd say, "Hold to me, mommy, hold to me." Aww. And I would, and so I think of that, like there's times it might not even be a moment necessarily of surrender, but it's okay, geez, I need you to hold me today, because it's been a week or it's been a day or, you know, whatever it might be. Yeah. Or sometimes there's just such an intimacy in a song in the moment during worship that you're just like, oh, we got to hug this out, Jesus, you know? And so there's that imagery too. Yeah. But I do think that there's something, what you just said about, there's something very real about us taking some kind of physical element and participating in worship or surrender or whatever, you know, it might be.
I go to the Christian comedian all the time. It's like carrying the TV. We're carrying the TV.
With the worship.
Let's carry the baby. Let's get him up there a little bit. We're carrying the baby up here.
Touchdown.
And then we're going to go up to the touchdown and we're going to go to the field goal. Here we go. This is the proper, I love it.
And then there's like the Lion King one, like,
oh yeah.
Oh yes, that's right.
That's hilarious to go to.
When we had that little break and all of our phones went off for a moment, Mike mentioned, you were like, we haven't really talked about the message all that much. Well, to bring us back to the message, one of Kathleen's last points in her message last weekend was that we're not standing alone. When we're standing firm, Jesus is standing with us. And I just want us to chat a little bit before we wrap up about that idea of when you're in the fire. So these Daniel and his friends were getting burned in a literal furnace. I'm not taking this like it's metaphorical imagery. I'm taking this as a true story. They were burning alive, right? Of course, we know that
they should have been burning alive.
They should have been burning to death, but they were alive in the furnace.
A furnace so hot that it killed three of the guards.
Just for
I don't know how many guards there were, but I would presume 3 because there were 3 guys.
I have the little message here.
Yeah, but even just trying to get them into the door, the guards died.
Right, just for standing near it. Mm-hmm. And so I want us to chat through how do we apply that, the imagery that we can take from this true story, that they saw the 4th man in there, but they only put 3 in there. So how does that connect to when we're the example? Are other people looking at us standing firm and seeing the 4th man? Are they seeing Jesus in our actions?
Oh, that's good.
How does that look to people? Are we doing it in a way that's like, I'm standing firm because I think this is right? Or are we standing firm and showing that there's another man for the reason that we're standing that way? You guys want to chat about that?
Dang, that's a big one.
I guess I could go and give Kathleen a second to catch it. Okay. And then we'll go over to her. That's a great point.
It's really good.
If I am, standing firm in the fire, is that showing Jesus to other people? That, it's a whole nother thing that I never even thought about when I heard Kathleen's message. I always look at it selfishly. Jesus is in there with me, like footprints in the sand. Mm-hmm. When I couldn't carry myself, Jesus walked me through it. Those are his footprints. That's how I always think about something. Jesus is constantly saving me from myself. Or whenever I've been really scared in my life, like being thrown into a fire, the only comfort, no humanly person could comfort me other than Jesus has always been there. Yeah. He's the only bridge that I haven't burnt. He's the only one that has loved me through everything that I've done bad to everybody in my life. So that's where I go with it. But I like what you're talking about. Do people see Jesus in there?
I just think it's really interesting because I do think as someone who has been a follower for a long time, there's been many times where I've looked at somebody else and their experiences that they're going through, which are really, really hard, or we've had some of our own experiences that we would never have imagined that we would have to walk through. And watching other people walk through stuff, there's times where I'm like, I know how you're doing it. I know that it's Jesus in you, but oh my gosh, you're making it through this, and I've said about people who don't know the Lord, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do some of the catastrophic things that can happen in our lives, circumstances or by choice or whatever. I just don't know how people do it without the Lord. And so when I watch somebody else walk through something that's really difficult, I really can see, not physically, but I can discern Jesus is in the middle of that with them. Otherwise, the grace that they're walking in or the faith that they have that it's going to be okay. And it doesn't look okay, and it doesn't seem like it's okay, and it's not the decisions that I would make, but it's going to be okay. And we have walked through a few of those things even on our own that we had a particular season that was really, really difficult. It was really difficult. And it was like every time you thought, okay, I think we made it through that, something else, boom. And it was just like kicking us when we were down. And I had to say to the Lord, I know that you are here, even when I can't see you. There's times I can't see you. I can't see what you're doing. I don't agree with what's happening right now. I believe that you, by miracles or by rescue, could make this different, but you're not making it different, and I don't understand that. But I know that you're here because you're the only reason I'm alive. Because if it wasn't for the hope I had in you, I would have finished this myself. Mm-hmm. And that's honest.
Yeah.
I would have taken care. I would be done by now. I can't. So God, I may not be able to see you. I may not be able to feel you. I may not be able to hear you. I may be really mad at you. But if there's anything that I will do, I will trust you. Mm-hmm. I will trust, period. I will trust you. Yeah. And if I didn't have that trust in him, and part of that trust being he has to be here with me, because in his absence, I'd be done. And so that's how I know if I'm going through the fire, he's standing next to me, because otherwise there are many circumstances that we have walked through that I would have been burned up.
That is the strength and courage of Daniel and his friends who said, my God is able. The translations, whichever one you read, one of them says, my God can save us. Another one, my God is able to save us. But even if he doesn't, so it's the belief, even if he doesn't, I'm not budging. It's the belief that he can, but even if he doesn't, he's sovereign. He can choose not to pull me out of this in a way that I can see. But I just trust in that. You going through that season looks to me, I can see the fourth man in this situation because you're putting his name on it. And that brings us back to what we were talking about last week from Daniel 4, when Joe spoke, and one of his main points was, how do we kind of combat the Babylon mentality, is to acknowledge God. It's defeating or, trying to slay pride by acknowledging God and what we do. That's good. Yeah. And that, I think, is our connection point here to at least these 2 chapters in the book of Daniel, is when we acknowledge him, we can see him, and other people can see him in our catastrophes, in those situations that are so catastrophic. My family went through something really catastrophic a few years ago, and I was so thankful to have like another family member in there who could just come to me and say, I'm so glad we have Jesus. Imagine going through this without Jesus. Yeah. Can you imagine doing that? And that, to me, I know that other family members who, don't believe the same things, at the very least could look on, and there's no mistake who I worship, who I serve, and who I relied on the whole time.
It's good.
It sounds like that is the same situation, that you're acknowledging him and that he is able, and even if he doesn't do something that you can see to rescue you or save you from that situation, he is going to be there. Yeah. And to me, that's being rescued, because if my God who created the universe can be with me, one just tiny little speck on the universe, me, then he can do anything.
Yeah.
How many times have we been in the fire not seeing Jesus right there next to us, and other people could clearly see Jesus standing there next to us, and we're oblivious to it. This has been great conversation. I think we got a lot of practical applications out of this. And I love that you two both have opened up to me so much, and you even caused me to open up. I'm a pretty open book anyways, but I think it's about reaching that time where we get to the awkward point of our podcast.
How to end.
Yeah, the
You
ending.
never know how to end.
I don't know how to end this thing. So
We just sign off.
no M's this week. Thank you for watching. And if you have any comments, make sure to leave them down below. And if you want to send us any ideas, it's open-ended podcast.
Open-ended. No dashes.
It's open-ended at eurekafacecenter.org. You can email us there. And then reach out on social media. Let us know. We appreciate everybody that's been giving us support. The podcast has really taken off. We love it.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. And Pastor Kathleen, I loved having you on. You're much better than Pastor Joe was in episode 2.
I'm going to tell him that when I get home. But maybe I'll wait until he's cooking me dinner right now. So maybe
yeah.
I'll wait until after dinner and then I'll tell
Sounds
him.
good.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathleen.
Yep. We love having you on and love having you a part of the church. I'm just adoring the fact that you guys are in my life and really good friends and just growing and growing and growing. So
Yeah.
with that, how do we end?
Bye.
Until next time.
Have a great day.
Bye.